Vice President commissions African Development Bank building in Abuja, reiterates commitment to the bank's strategy in Nigeria.
National Economic Council supports federal government's move to ensure that all perpetrators of violence are brought to book.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we focus on the multiplicity of political parties and the implications for Nigeria's democracy.
Well, the Nigerian political space is currently dominated by two political parties. That is the ruling All Progressives Congress, APC, and the main opposition, the People's Democratic Party.
Well, Blessing, that's right, but there is also ABGA, that's the All Progressive Grand Alliance. But indeed, many Nigerians will have forgotten that there are 43 other parties in addition to the three we just mentioned, which are also in existence. And this was until last week when 22 other political parties joined the number following the issuance of the certificates of registration by the Independent National Electoral Commission. This now means that the total number of political parties in Nigeria today stands at 68.
You're quite right. Now, political parties play very critical roles in democratization of any nation. Now, central to the successes and failures of electoral politics is this strategic function that is of this importance, and also the integral organ of democratization, which is its core area to its development.
Well, the number of political parties in the Nigerian space often has varied in the various republics that we have also had. The First Republic, Second Republic, for instance, there were 5 major political parties that we had. And then during the Third Republic, which was under the military regime of General Ibrahim Babangida, there were 2 prescribed political parties. One, it was said, a little to the left, and the other a little to the right. And since the advent of the Fourth Republic, 1999, Nigeria has witnessed, as it were, renewed and sustained activities of political parties. And we have had quite a number from no fewer than 3, 4, 5, 6, and now 68.
68. And well, let's say it keeps counting. As long as you have the receipts, criteria to actually come on, definitely you could be registered. Well, it's been argued that political parties in other climes are formed for the purpose of propagating a set of ideas or ideals, policies, and they're also all ideologically representing and promoting different interests in the society.
However, political parties in Nigeria today, according to some analysts, would appear to represent interests that are largely self-directed. With most of them, they also say lacking clear-cut ideologies. Now, these analysts argue that some of the parties are merely associations that revolve around a few individuals who felt aggrieved because they were denied tickets to contest elections on the platform of another party, or that some of these parties are indeed procured by the party in power at any point in time to further split the opposition.
You're quite right, Kingsley, and you see them moving in their droves. 1 minute this party in the morning, and by evening
another platform.
On another platform. Now, some who are supportive of this multiplicity of parties, on the other hand, say it will give Nigerians more alternatives during elections. However, political watchers say that from 1999 till date, the parties that have emerged from the ruling party to the smallest of parties, perhaps in numbers or whatever it is that have brought them together, are characterized by undemocratic practices, intra-party strife, and also corruption.
Now, the analysts also point out that the number of the political parties that participated in the last general elections in 2015, perhaps only 5 of them made any significant impact. Now, the rest did not secure any seats, for instance, in the National Assembly or in the state houses of assembly.
Sometimes even at the local government work.
At the local government levels, although there are questions about the conduct of local government elections, because what happens is that the party in power in the state oftentimes gets the election, wins the election 100% or 99.9999%.
You're quite right, Kingsley. Well, we've seen such acts from time to time, and you know, for some of those periods that you reeled out earlier, you see them having people issue based for people, things that will benefit the people. But these days, you just get to hear people either giving what the opposition is not doing well or not doing right at the
There are parties, analysts have said parties in name.
Just that. Well, whereas the Electoral Act was very specific that any political party that fails to score 10% of the seats during the local government elections, as emphasized by paragraph 10(2) of these guidelines, the political party shall continue to operate only at the local government level in all subsequent elections, as emphasized by paragraph 10(1). Now, until such a time, it complies with the provisions of paragraph 10(2) of the guidelines.
So, why register more political parties when, as it were, a good number of them are not making any significant impact in the polity, or for that matter, in the elections? Now, what is the implication of the multiplicity of parties, for instance, in the election management procedure that we have always seen, and ultimately on the country's democracy? These are some of the talking points that our guests will be examining in our discussion segment today, namely the multiplicity of political parties and the implications for the country's democracy. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and I welcome you to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria.
My name is Blessing Abu. Thank you for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria. We're live on the network service of the NTA, that's the Nigerian Television Authority. But first, here's the news with Ogwa Vivian Onyedibia as our guide.
Good morning, Blessing and Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria, and welcome to the news. President Muhammadu Buhari has described as unfair and divisionary comments that his administration has been carefree on matters critical to the unity of Nigeria. This was at a meeting with the leadership of the All Progressives Congress in Abuja.
Sit and reflect and continue to have my clear conscience. You are with the people more than myself now, having been locked up here. If I don't call you, it's not because for a moment I ever forgot how you supported me at one stage or the other over the years from 2003 to now.
President Muhammadu Buhari has also described as fulfilling and reassuring that more Nigerians are getting involved in agriculture, thereby giving impetus and hope to the nation's economic diversification drive. The president stated this while exchanging views with 3 new ambassadors posted to Nigeria after receiving their letters of credence. While the federal government says it will not condone any action by individuals or groups that will undermine democratic institutions towards the conduct of a peaceful and smooth elections in 2019. These were the words of President Muhammadu Buhari in a message to the 15th Daily Trust Dialogue.
I also call on politicians and political parties to pledge their commitment to the peaceful democratic process by urging their supporters to respect the electoral process and refrain from violence.
And away from that, the management of the University of Lagos has expressed formal appreciation to President Muhammadu Buhari for approving the first campus television license in West Africa for the institution. The Vice-Chancellor of the university, Professor Oluwatoyin Ogundipe, who was in the State House on a thank-you visit, said UNILAG TV is designed to enhance research-oriented education.
We are here to appreciate the President for giving us this an opportunity again to be the first university to have the television station. We want it to be one that will lead the space.
It's a demonstration of the willingness of this administration to support the media, especially the members of the 4th President of the REM, which are seen to be propellers of democracy.
And President Muhammadu Buhari has reiterated the commitment of his administration to African Development Bank's strategy in Nigeria, saying the nation will remain grateful to the group for the support the country received at a very difficult time. The president says the swift response of the bank in 2015-2016 in approving $1 billion loan, out of which $600 million was released and utilized, enabled the country to exit recession as well as make headway in its economy.
Communities and people emerging from insurgency in the northeast and some of the militancy in the Niger Delta region. With its large market of over 185 million people, Nigeria will continue to be an important player in the bank's work, advancing efforts to boost regional integration within the economic community of West African states, in particular, and Africa as a whole.
The National Economic Council has constituted a working group to collaborate with the federal government in addressing the issues of impunity regarding killings and violence across the country. The committee, consisting of 9 governors under the chairmanship of the Vice President, will work in accordance with commensurate commitment to ensure that all perpetrators of violence are brought to book.
They added that the need to invest in HIV is imperative because donor funding is on the decline due to global economic circumstances.
And to legislative matters now, the Senate has passed the revised edition of the Laws of the Federation of Nigeria Bill 2018. National Assembly correspondent Dennis Adegunoye reports that this followed clause-by-clause considerations of the report of the Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters.
The bill, in the committee's view, seeks to make comprehensive provisions for the periodic revision of laws of the Federation of Nigeria by the Law Revision Committee.
I think with this bill now, we're certain that in every 10 years, we'll have a compilation of the laws of the Federation.
Meanwhile, sexual offenses against children has become a recurring deviance, which has now become a big social problem in Nigeria. Well, to put this under control, the House of Representatives is considering a bill that seeks to provide for punishment, registration and monitoring of such sexual offenders. The Chief of Defense Staff, General Gabriel Olonisaki, has challenged stakeholders in the ongoing Operation Safe Corridor to work out modalities for smooth transfer of de-radicalized and rehabilitated ex-Boko Haram members to their respective state authorities. General Olonisaki stated this at a meeting of stakeholders for the review of the reintegration of rehabilitated ex-Boko Haram fighters.
The first set of 95 surrender Boko Haram fighters was admitted into the camp in July 2017 and have successfully gone through the 16 weeks program.
And the network of Nigeria civil society organizations has joined the vanguard of federal government cattle colonies initiative, describing it as the permanent solution to the perennial farmers-herders clashes, as well as cattle rustling in the country. Director General of the organization, Agbonkpolo Splendor, stated this while addressing a World Press Conference on the need for Nigerians to support the initiative.
We want to raise discussions across board. We want to raise discussion across states of the Federation. Let's discuss. Maybe if we discuss as Nigerians, we'll be able to get that key that government needs to put in place to ensure an egalitarian society.
Well, that's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria. We'll be back with Blessing and Kingsley after this break.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem frontally through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
organized, trained, and fully equipped. We are the new improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime. We bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
Cold and flu can spread through the contact of hands. And in such situations, I can't risk falling ill. So I recommend Dettol, as it protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs. That's why I want to be Dettol sure. Dettol, be 100%.
Does it mean you are in paid employment if you have a boyfriend or girlfriend?
A boyfriend that cannot put his girlfriend on a weekly or monthly allowance. Is that one a boyfriend?
Is a relationship a job and you must get paid?
I might be needing like 20 to 25K.
I transferred 15,000 naira for you some days ago.
Your rib-cracking comedy, Professor John Bull, takes a detailed look at this trend in this episode titled Meal Tickets.
In our days, we enjoyed courtly love, not cupboard love.
Exactly.
Now you keep quiet, young man.
An episode that comically explodes the myths and misconceptions surrounding relationships and defines the employers as well as the employees in this unusual job situation.
Over and out.
Brought to you by Glow,
the largest data network. Glow Unlimited. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the daring and invincible Louis the Mosquito. Responsible for 200 malaria cases all on its own. Is there anything that can kill Louis? Morphine! Presenting Morti's Power Guard. Its powerful formula kills malaria mosquitoes fast. So, get Morti's Power Guard.
Whenever pain occurs, you want quick relief. Try Nurofen Express. It goes to the source of pain and gets to work in under 15 minutes. That's why Nurofen Express delivers fast and effective relief. Nurofen Express works at the source of pain. Fast.
Being a mom is great, but when your child has a fever, you don't know what to do. I trust Nurofen for Children to take care of my child's pain and fever.
Effective relief you can trust.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. If you just tuned in, let's take a look at some business reports. Now, economic analyst is calling for the improved management of national resources. It says government at all tiers should make distribution based on priority. Plus, EU proposes more VAT flexibility for member states. Details with Joy Uzo.
Hello and welcome to Business News. Banks in Nigeria and across the world are expected to shift priorities towards growth, digitization and innovation in 2018 to be able to remain in business and make remarkable profits. This is one of the highlights of the latest Global Banking Outlook 2018 report conducted by Ernst & Young, EY Global. The survey report was a result of intensive research carried out on senior bankers at 221 institutions across Europe, North America, Asia, and emerging economies like Nigeria. The report stated that 85% of banks cite implementation of a digital transformation program as a business priority in 2018. Investment in technology to drive efficiency, manage evolving risk, and benefit from growth opportunities is seen by banks as critical for sustainable success. Significantly, addressing cybersecurity is a top priority for global banks in 2018, replacing last year's top priority of managing reputational, conduct, and culture risk, which falls to 6th place in this year's report. Meanwhile, investors who are yet to register for the e-dividend need not fret, as the Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) has extended the exercise to the 28th of February. Similarly, deadline for the forbearance window for multiple accounts consolidation is now 31st March. The Apex regulator in a statement said it is in constant consultation with other stakeholders to ensure a seamless process, adding that no investor will be charged until their registration is approved. And the equities market reverses 3-day uptrend in the week to close Thursday in the red. The NSE All-Share Index depreciates by 0.08% to close at 44,848.74 basis points. Next is a graphic summary. Economic analyst Mr. Levi Joseph says quality leadership and management of resources is the bedrock of a vibrant and sustainably stable economy. Calling for improved management of national resources, the analyst says increase in the nation's revenue base as a result of the recent global rise in price of oil and other economic indicators which portends growth for the economy. This 2018 is not a solution to Nigeria's economic challenges, but effective management. He stated this in an interview with Business News.
I do not consider the GDP the only problem we have as a gross domestic product, but I consider the attitude of the managers of the economy. What makes you wealth is not how much you earn in a month. It is how you manage it and invest it back. Nigeria is massively blessed.
Finally, shoppers across Europe could enjoy more value-added tax VAT rebates under proposals unveiled by the European Commission on Thursday as part of a broader overhaul aimed at simplifying the rules and reducing business costs. Under the present rules, EU member states must charge a minimum VAT rate of 15%, with reductions possible for a handful of predefined goods and services. The issue previously hit the headlines when British campaigners complained about an EU-mandated minimum sales tax of 5% on tampons. EU tax rules are hard to change because they require the unanimous approval of all member states. That's Business News. Good Morning Nigeria continues.
Thank you very much, Joy Uzo, for the business news. Next for us now, we'll take a look at the front pages of some of today's newspapers.
Once again, we'd like to welcome Bayo to the studio. It's ready for today's review. Good morning to you, Bayo.
Good morning, Blessing. Good morning, Kinsley. It's Friday. Good morning, Nigeria.
That's with a great deal of anticipation. All right, let's take our stories that, of course, are common to the front pages of the papers that we have this morning. The stories. Let's begin with This Day and the Authority newspaper. They have stories on the same thing as their lead. For This Day newspaper, it says NEC, that's the National Economic Council, constitutes committee to tackle conflict between herdsmen and farmers. And two riders, Sultan exonerates Miye of atrocities by herders. And tension in Ekiti as pregnant woman is killed. Of course, that killing was by an alleged herdsman. Now, herdsmen, that's for the Authority newspaper, that's the kicker. Herdsmen, Oshibajo, heads committee to end killings. With a rider, PDP blasts APC governors and ministers on Benue massacre. And those are the lead stories for the two papers. I'm sure, Blessing, you also have similar headlines.
Exactly, Kingsley. For the Punch, papers. It's the lead story for the Punch. They have, which has Oshibajo, 9 governors on panel to end killings by herdsmen. Well, there's a rider. Crisis may get out of control, Sultan warns. More details of that particular story on page 7 of the Punch. It's also the lead story for the Nigerian pilot. NEF, that's Nigerian Economic Forum, to federal government and states do more on herdsmen killings. 3 riders as Kogi East rejects cattle colony in Igala land. Attacks, a new form of terrorism. This is come from Benue community. And herdsmen kill pregnant woman in Ekiti. That's all the details of what I've read. You find on page 4 for the Nigerian pilots. Bayo.
Yes, well, the National Economic Council has named 9 governors, and the governors are that of Kaduna, Zamfara, Taraba, Benue, Adamawa, Edo, Plateau, Oyo, and Ebonyi State. They constitute a committee to be headed by the Vice President to find a means of ending the killing emanating from herdsmen and farmers' clashes. The committee must see through the sentiments of ethnic and religious imputations. The killings have emanated from economic struggle for survival overland. And it is not only peculiar to Nigeria. I look back and I say that in Ghana, it manifested 25 years ago. And recently, there was a resurgence at a place called Agogo in Akuapem area. And it led to the destroying of farmlands and pollution of water. And they had to send in policemen because they were saying that there were, what do they call, mercenaries from Mali who were in Ghana. So not only there, in 2012, it happened in Burkina Faso in an area called Sango. 7 persons were killed. In Niger, it happened in 2016, 18 were killed. In Cameroon, it was a clash between what they call Mbororo cattle herders and farmers. This is in spite of the fact that in that country, they have a 1974 law established on land grazing precincts. In Côte d'Ivoire, 17 people were killed in March 2017. It is also there across borders. Between Mali and Mauritania, 30 were killed. Between the banks of Mauritania and Senegal, in the Senegal Valley, there was also clashes there, and between farmers and herders, some were killed. Now, factors leading to this, according to some researchers, is urbanization, erosion, drought that has led to the reduction of land for cultivation by farmers and herding by pastoralists. And for Nigeria, it was said that since 1980, when we introduced the Fadama scheme, the river basins area where most of the Fadama projects are going on has now become the incubation of this crisis. The farmers are heading there to farm, and the herders are taking their cattle there to feed. And so these are the essence of the crisis. Therefore, the National Economic Council must see through all the smokescreen of ethnic cleansing that is being bandied around, religious divide, and also there's even on the social media that this is a continuation of 1984 war started by Usman Dan Fodio. All this is not...
Did you say 1984?
1804. All this is not putting our nation at rest, and it's causing mutual suspicion, which is not engendering mutual coexistence and peaceful coexistence. Also, one must look at the laws that have been established. If the law, for instance, was saying that a law to eliminate the challenges between farmers and herders and find solutions between trampling on farms and cattle rustling, there won't be resistance as we have seen. Also, the federal government is proposing a colony. You are having a colony in a state. That itself has a negative connotation. Any wonder when one of the governors says his state has limited land and therefore it is not ready to allocate what he described as land for alien occupation in Nigeria. Again, these are the negative nuances that are coming from this.
Well, thanks. I mean, as we said, if you look again, the two writers there, the comment made by the Sultan, exonerating Mieti Allah of atrocities by herders. There's a detailed report of what the Sultan indicated. Quite clearly, again, re-emphasizing the statement he made sometime last year, that persons who are perpetrating these atrocities are criminals, and that the law enforcement agencies should go after them, that they are not members of Mieti Allah. And I think that is the key point that many commentators have been talking about. The issues you raised earlier with regard to the constitutive factors, guests on this program have also referenced those things. But where you have mercenaries or whoever they are, engaging in all kinds of things, first illegal possession of firearms, these are assault weapons, unlicensed, and then you have them, actually engaging in criminal assault, armed robbery, and murder. So that's the Sultan is saying, let the law enforcement agencies do their work.
Our borders are porous. How did these people get in?
Absolutely. Exactly. All right. So let's take other headlines. Now, there's another one, this one above the nameplate of this day newspaper. It says at last. It's not there in the headline. Well, at last, petroleum bill now ready for Buhari to sign, says Dogara. Petroleum bill now ready for Buhari to sign, says Dogara. And then to writer Saraki, other aspects of the bill will be handled by joint committee of both houses. Another one, federal government sues JP Morgan over Malabu deal. So PIGB, as it is called, that's the Petroleum Industry Governance Bill, has been signed. A related story to that, Tinubu calls for the regulation of fuel price and seeks progressive governance. That's on page 10.
All right, back to the Nigerian pilot. The story on the petroleum bill is just below the nameplate. You have it as Saraki as a kicker. Passage of petroleum bill will help curb future fuel scarcity. More details on page 9. Now, on insurgency, there is a story just beside that of the petroleum bill. Military frees 95 surrendered Boko Haram fighters. More details on page 5. Now, let's move down the paper, further down the paper. The photograph is that of members of Benue State communities protesting at the entrance of the National Assembly yesterday over the continuous killings of the people by headsmen. Well, we just discussed the headsmen, so we'll move on. Buhari asks for extension of FCT 2017 budgets. Okay, quickly now to the Punch. Let's see some other stories before Bayo will come in here. Just above the nameplate, you have Shitu's petition against Ajimobi, reckless, full of lies. This comes from Oyo State APC. But beside that, you have a story on health. Ebonyi closes schools to check spread of Lassa fever. More details on page 10. Then at the foot of the page, still on the Punch, tension in Jos, over 200 missing cows. More details on page 8. Now, on pages 4 and 5, we have the story of a man beaten to death in Lagos Barless Palace over a motorcycle. Now, court affirms IPOB's prescription and designation as a terrorist. More details on page 14. Yeah,
those are the stories you read with regard to IPOB and Ebonyi and Lassa fever. You also have them on the front pages of this day newspaper. It's there on the front page, just beside the photograph of some of the governors on this day. It says court refuses to vacate order prescribing IPOB. That is there. And, but then at the foot of the front page of the Authority newspaper, you have the reaction of Ohaneze. Ohaneze rejects court judgment on IPOB. That story is in greater detail on page 12. And then above the nameplate of the Authority newspaper, there's a story there. Ekweme for burial, February 2nd, that's on page 4. And then Ebonyi Lassa fever death toll rises to 4 on page 4.
Yes, the Ebonyi State Commissioner of Education has explained that they closed the school up to 26th of January to stem any possible spread of Lassa fever. But meanwhile, there have been 9 cases. There have been 4 deaths, 9 cases, and they have made contact traces of 139. And all hands are on deck, as is usually said, to ensure that they contain the disease.
So also on the front, on the inside page now, third page now, there's an editorial on cholera to be completely eradicated in Nigeria, alongside this issue of Lassa epidemic as well. There are stories on cholera as well.
Well, with cholera is usually waterborne diseases, and we have that as a challenge because the other day the Minister for Water Resources was saying that Nigeria has a challenge because only 15% of our urban areas have potable water supply. So the moment we are able to increase the challenges of our water supply basin and across the country, we will go a long way in eliminating them. This was also a challenge, if you remember, in the IDP camps because of poor health conditions. Exactly. There were outbreaks of and instances of cholera. On the whole, worldwide, if there are good hygienic conditions and potable water, cholera should be eliminated. Yes.
Okay, Bayo, I think that's the much we can take this morning on the papers. I'd like to thank you for coming today and indeed all through the week. Hope to see you on Monday.
Thank you very much. See you on Monday.
Yes, watching Good Morning Nigeria. Let's take a break to bring you some messages, and it will be time to take a look at our discussion this morning on multiplicity of parties. We'll be right back after this break.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
I was distressed to notice that some of the comments, especially in the social media, have crossed our national red lines by daring to question our collective existence as a nation. This is a step too far.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Helen! Your kitchen gets 10 out of 10. Thank you. This also gets a 10. Should we see the toilet now?
Sure.
This gets just 1.
It is clean.
But not perfect 10.
Better than my detergent and bleach? Impossible.
Challenge? Try the new Apic 10X.
Compared to bleach and detergent, Apic sticker formulation removes yellow stains times better, giving you a sparkling clean toilet.
Wow.
Now you also take that
Apic 10X challenge.
Also available in 200 ml pack.
The time has come for Nigeria to take her rightful place in world sports with the first national grassroots sports festival to discover and prepare sport talents and develop future world champions for Nigeria. The festival date is 3rd to 10th March 2018. Venue is the National Stadium, Abuja, packages A and B. This is the opportunity for you to promote your brand through the festival. For broadcast sponsorship, which include live broadcasts, highlight shows, and TV fans show, contact the chairman, chief coordinator, Angelo Peter I. Elosia, or Nick Onishi. Organizers, Grassroots International Sports Academy and LOP Worldwide Television. Endorsed by the Federal Ministry of Youth and Sports Development. Broadcast partner, NTA.
When I was a little girl, I loved spending time with Mum and Grandma cleaning the house. I knew what Grandma's secret was. I was so excited to sing in the choir.
And your shirts are always so white.
I knew what Mum's secret was. Today, I'm a modern woman that still trusts the secrets passed down to me. It's Jik, of course, the trusted bleach which can be used all around your house for amazing results.
Shh, it's our little secret.
It's no secret. Jik removes 101 stains. Just Jik it.
Cold and flu can spread through the contact of hands. And in such situations, I can't risk falling ill. So I recommend Dettol, as it protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs. That's why I want to be Dettol sure. Dettol, be 100%.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
If you just tuned in, the program is Good Morning Nigeria. Now to kickstart a discussion on multiplicity of parties, let's take this report as put together by Oyeyemi Ajayi.
Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC), Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, presented certificates of registration to 21 newly registered political parties. This is in addition to the 47 parties already in existence, and this makes the numbers of registered political parties in Nigeria to be 68. This gives them the right to participate in the 2019 general elections and any other elections in the future. The figure has been growing in leaps and bounds since the evolution of political parties in Nigeria. It all started with 3 political parties in 1959, the National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroon's NCNC, led by Nnamdi Azikiwe, the Action Group AG, led by Chief Obafemi Awolowo, and the Northern People's Congress NPC, led by Ahmadu Bello, were the 3 political parties existing in Nigeria. Between 1996 to 1998, only 7 political parties were known, but by 2015, the number of registered parties rose to 26. In 2016, INEC announced the existence of 40 registered political parties, meaning more political parties passed the conditions of existence. While many have wondered why more political parties are being formed, others have again argued that multiplicity of parties will give the citizens enough to choose from. But one golden question has been whether Nigeria indeed needs many political parties for democracy to thrive. This is because other countries like the United States and Britain do not have the number of political parties Nigeria has and are manifesting the democratic tenets. With this number of political parties in Nigeria, does this still give the average Nigerian the satisfaction of political participation? And can it be said that democracy is indeed evident in the country with the rising number of political parties? How many more political parties might just be created in the future? These questions and more will be answered shortly by guests on Good Morning Nigeria.
Well, thank you very much. Oyeyemi Ajayi. The guests are already here with us in the Abuja studios to deal with the subject matter. First, let's welcome a familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria, Professor Sam Ego. Sam Ego is a professor of political science and is currently resident electoral commissioner, Niger State. Professor Ego, pleasure to have you join us on the program.
Good morning.
Also, another familiar face indeed. The 3 guests we have with us here are familiar faces on the Good Morning Nigeria when we're discussing election matters. Next is Dr. Yunusa Tanko, who is the former chair of the Interparty Advisory Council. Dr. Tanko, pleasure to have you join us this morning.
Good morning, Nigerians, and Happy New Year.
All right, for another guest we have also in the studio here, we would like to introduce and welcome Lazarus Api. He's also a familiar face, as Kingston has indicated. From time to time when we have issue of election, you get to see him as well. I would like to welcome Lazarus Api. He's of the electoral, we have him as expert on electoral matters. Welcome, Mr. Api.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Also, okay.
All right. Let's begin this conversation by establishing the idea, try to understand rather why political parties exist, what political parties are, and the function that parties play generally in a democracy. Because I mean, there are societies or countries where you have a one-party system, others run zero-party, and the advocates of democracy have often highlighted the advantages of multipartyism. Professor Sam Ego, take the first shot.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Well, the simple fact is that modern electoral democracies cannot function properly without political parties. And that is why everyone agrees that political parties are the institutional foundations of democracy. In my introduction to political science, I was given a very simple definition of political parties. And that definition has remained stuck in my head. And that is that political parties are voluntary association of people who have a common purpose and the same idea about the management of the public space and whose major preoccupation is to seek to capture political power. Now, so the distinguishing element of political party from other associations is that they seek to capture power, retain power, and use power for the purpose of advancing the public good. Of course, we have had countries, even in Africa, Uganda, for example, that has tried to experiment without political parties. But we know, the anarchy that has brought and the fact that it has resulted in one man ruling forever. So, but the real question that I want to raise about political parties is not existing as organizations. They perform core functions, and that is why they are relevant to democracy. One of those functions is that they engage in what we call interest articulation and interest aggregation. In other words, they pull together the various ideas, of people about how to govern and to seek to represent those ideas, in the way they govern when they capture power. Secondly, political parties are supposed to be clear policy platforms. They are not just electoral machines that are instituted or established for the purpose of capturing power. In other words, we expect that parties should distinguish themselves in terms of the policies they are proposing. And that is a way in which they help to structure the preferences of voters. And therefore come out to say, we represent this set of ideas. We want to promote welfare, for the people. We want to do market reform. We want to, and that is how our parties have been structured. If you go back to the Second Republic, the MPN stood for something. The UPN stood for another. And in that way, voters can link up to parties in terms of the interests they seek to advance. You can go on and on to talk about other important functions of parties. For example, political parties don't just rise up only when election has been announced. They continue to perform certain key institutional functions, mobilizing their members, passing on important message about political education, including how they vote on election day. But the major pathologies of our own party system, and that is the tragedy we have been facing, since we came back to the Fourth Republic in particular, is that political parties hardly represent anything. And you can hardly tell the difference between one and the other. Many of them go comatose in between elections and only come alive when the election is announced. And of course, there's a whole question of forming parties being turned into business, in terms of people wanting to float party so that they can have platform to negotiate, and so sometimes even ahead of election, they are aligning and realigning and endorsing presidential candidates and so on. So there's also a game that, and that's why many of us come to the conclusion that for you to develop and deepen democracy, you need Democrats, people who are genuinely interested in making politics a contest of ideas and seeking power to advance the public good.
All right, Professor Sambegu, thank you very much. Dr. Yunus Tanko, what's your take on the foundational definitions and propositions advanced by Professor Sambegu?
Yeah, now the position that was postulated by Prof is professorial. That's exactly the way it is. And even though there are areas in which Prof alluded to the fact that some of the political parties do not do anything until when it's time for election. But there are some of us who have been very, very active, and then we make sure that some of the political parties are functional, even though the major challenge that we have as political parties is funding. And then where other political parties have been given the room to use state resources to advance their cause as against those who are already there for a very long time. And that has been a big challenge to all of the political parties. Not to say that they don't want to perform. They are interested in power and they want to take over power, but people do not even look at their own position. And people just play to the gallery of those political parties who have won elections. Like you major on a certain political party like probably the APC and the PDP. And even when you are performing, with all due respect to the media, they just only look at you as call you names like mushroom parties and all of those ones. And even if you make a statement that is content, I'll give you an example. I visited Benue State just after the killings that took place in Benue State. I can't remember any of the media that really, apart from the newspaper, the electronic media, they didn't even carry it. But I didn't mean that it was a political party like the APC or the PDP that went to Benue State. It would have been headlines. So you need to give some kind of help in giving visibility to the action of some of the political parties. And this helps to tell Nigerians that, look, you don't need to be docile and be one-sided or belonging to one other political. There are 68 political parties, as it were. Nigeria has always been a multi-party democratic system. Since 1959, we have the NCNC, we have the NPC, we have the AG. And where there are differences, and then you have the first merger that took place between the NPC and then the AG, which formed the Abuja. Then later on, there was another merger between the NCNC, including some part of Abuja, AG. Those are some of those things that happened in 1959. And in 1979, we had about 5 political parties: the NPN, we have the PRP, we have the GNPP, we have the UPN, and then in 1993, of course, well, that was when we have the 2 political parties. We have the NRC and then the SDP. And now today we are having 68 political parties. That gives you room for choice. The whole idea behind it, when the National Conscience Party, led by Chief Gani Fawehinmi, went to court, was to open up the space and give opportunity to those who are being denied the opportunity to run for election. And the end result is what we have seen now. You have to allow the political party to evolve with time. The end result is that you now see that 5 political parties merge to form the APC, and then look at what it has been. And the key important thing here to note is that those who are being denied platform to run for elections in certain political parties that has adjourned to be known, you know, is that you can now go to another political party, and if you are popular, you take over the space. I give a simple example of what happened in Ondo State, where Olusegun Mimiko was almost denied, but he went to Labour Party and he made the Labour Party a very big brand. So the idea of having a multi-political party is to give opportunity for very large number of political actors to go into politics and contest elections.
All right.
Where your report, I saw your report saying that US and Britain do not have as much political. I certainly disagree. When you make another better research, you will find out that US have more than almost 100 and something political parties. So also is Britain. I make a reference to Chief Gani Fawehinmi. Olufala said there is a political party in UK called the Lunatic Political Party. Yes, so these are some of the areas that political parties have.
But Dr. Tanko, thanks a lot. The context with that background report stated that we said that we don't have as many political parties as we are seeing. Some of them are fairly regional or small parties. But in Nigeria, from what we know already, there's no party known as the Lunatic Party, or is anyone in the office?
No, not certainly. All right, thank you very much, Dr. Tanko. We'll get back to you. Let's bring in Lazarus Apri now. It will be said that Nigerian political parties just exist in name. There are more similarities than differences, really. On what do we stand different from what we've had in the past republics up to date?
I tend to agree very much, because if you wake an average Nigerian up and ask them a certain politician's political party, they may have a challenge telling you where that politician belongs, because they keep bouncing from here to there. It's not a case of ideology. They basically are just looking for a platform to flag their brand. So you see a lot of movements, which goes to tell you that they are really not different in terms of what they stand for. And like the prof said, political parties should stand for something. If you are voting because you are a conservative, you want to vote for this party. If you are voting because you are a liberal, you want to stand with this party. But in this context, as we have, and since time, they have always been this cross-carpeting, which goes to say, so in Nigeria, a Nigerian politician is a liberal today and a conservative tomorrow, and back to being a liberal the next day. So that, for me, means they don't believe in that. They don't believe in ideology. They simply just want the space. And maybe that is why Dr. Yunusa is supporting that it's opened the space. It shouldn't just be about opening the space. For instance, in Nigeria, there are over 60 million young Nigerians. And I can tell you, less than 2% of them are card-carrying members of any political party. Take any one of them on to tell you what a political party stands for and why they should align with that kind of thinking or organization or association. Nothing. The political parties also have a duty of voter education. But they join the rest of us to blame INEC. And these are the people who really need the votes. It's not INEC that needs votes. It's not the civil society that needs votes. So if anyone should be leading voter education, it should be the political parties. But they are the last to go for that. Think about it also in the context of a political party having very wealthy politicians who even borrowing from corporate social responsibility should be able to make some incentives available to lure the young ones to join political party. They don't do that. You know why? It's too beneficial. They don't want the competition from the young folks. So they are not opening the space as they will claim that multiplicity of political party is bringing. Politicians who have benefited politics are not in any way making incentives to encourage younger folks to also join and become partisan politicians. And for me, that is also denying sustainability for their brands. And so we have a situation where people are just basically creating more opportunities or platforms. There is a politician in PDP or APC or Labour Party who directly funded the establishment of another party just as a backup plan. In case he doesn't get the ticket here, he will just go there and be the pick the automatic ticket for that. Those kind of thinkings are very awful.
Yeah, that's what Professor Lazarus. That's what Professor Sambego referred to as the business aspect, to negotiate or platforms, you know, for shopping, for tickets. Professor Sambego, Dr. Yunusa Tanko, you know, took us back to the case by Chief Gani Fawemi. At the time, there was always a provision requiring that a political party must meet a certain threshold to continue to be in existence. But you know, the court took a view that look, in terms of associational rights, as well as, of course, all of that enshrined in Chapter 4 of the Constitution, there should be no restriction. But from what we are seeing now, in terms of what some analysts believe is a phenomenal explosion in the number of political parties, is there cause for worry?
Well, I think, let me go back to the point you raised. I think there are two landmark judgments. The first one in 2003 that compelled INEC to register political parties, including APGA. I think it was Balarabe Musa that went to court. And the basis of that judgment was very simple, that political association or forming political parties falls within the purview of fundamental rights of citizens, and that INEC does not have the power to introduce provisions or criteria that are outside the Constitution, and therefore they say you have to register them. In 2012, you remember, after the 2011 elections, the Jega leadership of INEC, they registered 28 political parties. They went to court, and the same principle bounced back, namely that you cannot. So I think it's fairly settled in our country that you cannot regulate the number of political parties as long as citizens are invoking their rights to associate politically, to form political parties. Now, and that is the situation in many democracies. So what do you do with the kind of anarchy that comes? We have said there are 68 political parties. The chairman of INEC told us recently that there are 120 applications they are processing. Now, if you follow that logic, you are likely going to get over 100 political parties. How do you manage? Now, you are going to run elections to offices of president, vice president, governors, deputy, then the state assemblies, then the Senate, then the House of Rep. So if all these parties should have candidates for these offices, it's going to be very chaotic from the point of view of managing the electoral process. But of course, INEC is helpless in this regard, because here the superiority of the Constitution has been pronounced and we have to live with it. What happens in many jurisdictions, and probably we can borrow from here going forward, and how we deal with the challenge of the moment going to 2019. In India, for example, political parties are formed, but it is not necessary that all political parties are national political parties. First of all, a political party is recognized as a state at the state level. And then even to be recognized at the state level, you have to be in existence for about 5 years. And you would have had persons elected on your platform, you know, at any level of the legislature. And then when you gain recognition in about 4 or 5 states, you then are elevated to a national political party. In that way, there's a way of structuring parties. So you can even have 1,000 parties, but not all of them will run for governorship election. Not all of them will run for presidential election. And I think this is something probably that Nigeria might consider in terms of the power of the election management body to regulate and define access to the ballots, you know, and that is to say you introduce some criteria. And if you recall, what Jega tried to do in 2012, you know, which was eventually overturned by the courts, was to say that by the provisions of the Electoral Act, if you don't have anybody elected into a council, into the House of Assembly, then you don't have basis to exist. And that was why 28 were registered. But law is law. The law says we cannot do that. You know, but my point really is that managing political parties, you know, fielding candidates for all the positions across 100 political parties is a big challenge. It can confuse even the electorate. All right. You then begin to think of what kind of ballot paper are you going to use? Will it be the one that will lie from outside there to this place?
All right.
You know, like the longest snake that you can. Anyway, but my point really is that it's something to really deal with.
Okay, let's get views from Dr. Unisa Tanko. Earlier on, Professor, in part of his definition, took a look at interest articulation and also common purposes, ideas. Now, while I was speaking with, or while Lazaro was talking, we talked about issue of ideology. Now, the absence of ideology in most of our political parties today, different from what we had in time past. We've talked about issue of different parties. Those days, it's either they team up with interest of education or some other areas that were common issues for the people. Today, is the absence of ideology in political parties as we have found them today of great concern for us?
Well, when you say ideology, I've always said that political parties in Nigeria do have ideologies.
So why are they not being pursued?
The truth about it is that each of the political parties to be registered must draw up its program from the Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So that is why it looks similar in certain areas. Some of the political parties, like the National Conscience Party, for example, we have major our interests. We are center-left as a political party. We are more into a masses-based political party with an alternative position that, yes, the masses need to be cared for in certain respects. So that is our own core area, and we'll make it a major importance that anything that is inimical to the survival of the total population of this country, at least in the large number, is a challenge to us, and so we take it up headlong. Now, other political parties have the same different idea. Some of them are center-right, some of them are center-left, like the PRP, for example. So you cannot say in totality that probably that all the political parties lack ideology. What you do not see is actually practicing that particular ideological.
So why is it difficult to practice?
Let me give you a clear-cut example of what is happening. Even right now at the government of the day, you find out that some of the things that they position to the people is not what actually they are actually doing for the people. So that gives it a lot of problem, because the candidate that runs for election come with his own personal memorandum. And so when he's selling it to the people, it becomes difficult, apart from what the political party has actually stipulated. So when he's selling his manifesto, as it were, it sells a different thing as a candidate, and then the political party sells another different thing exactly. So
which is greater, the party's manifesto or the candidate's ideology?
The party manifesto supreme to the individual. The party manifesto is supreme to the individual. So we need to ensure that the party manifesto is actually the social contract between the party and the electorate, not the individual manifesto. And because some of the political parties that will have exemplified this particular ideological belief that all Nigerians want to see are completely being annihilated. And that's giving me back to Lazarus saying that probably the political party are the custodian of actually a kind of enlightening the people in terms of sensitization. I agree totally. Can you now compare us with the civil society group who can source money locally and internationally? But the political party, as it were, yes, we have been asked that we can generate funds for our political party through dues and the rest of them. But the system has already been gagged in such a way that only those in power can siphon money from public funds and use it to their advantage and then leaving others. There's no standard ways of funding for the political party, at least in technical support. You cannot fund money internationally. The laws prohibit you from doing so. Locally, it is only those who are in power that can do so. So it becomes so difficult for a political party that is being called mushroom or not to perform. But others can perform because they have access to unending funding because they are in government. And that is one key area that you really need to look into so that people will have the opportunity to have fun, to actually, sensitize the public as regards to the need to be into politics.
You want the parties to become parastatals?
Okay. The government itself completely, are they not more or less like taking advantage of the position in which they find themselves? It's not a parastatal, but they need to be given technical funding to be able to perform. When you say parastatal, it's at least maybe like an appendix of the government. Why do you explain the government in power using state resources to its own advantage? You go to I just give you an example. If you are in a political party in a state, for example, and you want to contest local government election, especially now that the state government are the one that forms state electoral system, they make sure that no other political party return. You cannot even have access to the state radio. Not that you have access to even any security except the one you pay for. So when you allow illegality and complete submerging of others and you expect parity, it cannot happen. So you must give room for everybody. If you want to allow a political party to function very well, make sure there's a level playing down for all concerned. But irrespective of which party you in, make it a plain level ground rather than allowing others. So what is it better? Is it better for you to keep on stealing money through the back door and then why to legalize it so that everybody will know where you stand? It is better for us to legalize it to ensure that everybody is given the same opportunity, at least at the minimum level. Then you see the political party perform the union.
All right, Yunus Satanko, thanks a lot. Let's bring in again Lazarus. Lazarus, a number of points on the table. So take off in terms of what Professor Egu said and what Dr. Tanko said, managing this mushrooming number of political parties that we are seeing.
So you see, my concern when they say there is this seeming lack of parity between the government, the parties that have formed government and those of them that are on the outside is, as you roll out the plan to get your party registered, how did you vision to grow the party? What were you thinking that would finance the growth of your party? Look, if you put together all of the card-carrying members of political parties in Nigeria, I'm not so sure you'll have up to 5 million. Out of 180 plus million Nigerians. The point still being that people register political parties and just sit back and expect that one will wake up and feel so excited and go and register in their party and pay them dues, and then they will suddenly have the money. I cannot do that. I have to be courted. I have to be lured. I have to be convinced why I should join a political party. And when I do join, I will pay my dues, and then you can have resources to function. There are very easy ways political parties can grow their membership low cost. There are Google Forms you can just create and float them, and with a low budget, as low as 5,000 naira, you can make paid adverts on Facebook and Twitter, and young people, because they are targeted adverts, young people will get to see them. And strangely, you will see someone read your ideology and be excited to complete that form in 5 minutes and transfer 100 naira to you as their registration fee. So the political parties need to become creative. They need to target the young people. They need to work. There is strength in our population, but a lot of these political parties do not see that strength. They basically are looking up to the big boys who have made it to government and are now wealthy. That shouldn't be their basis for comparison. They should draw strength instead from the population that is untapped. So for me, I do not necessarily agree to the fact that with this multiplicity of political parties, government should still concern itself with financing them. That's not sustainable.
And the other point that Professor Samego talked about has to do with managing the parties at elections. Elections, that's to say, elections conducted by INEC. The state independent electoral commissions also have to conduct their elections. So how would it be if a SIEC, for instance, has 68 parties on the ballot?
Yeah. It's really sad. And we do these things without consideration for the electoral management body. For instance, because of what the law is now, it's possible to have 5,000 political parties in Nigeria. And just imagine 5,000 political parties all fielding 44 candidates for the general election. INEC itself is staffed with how many people?
Yes.
You know? So we do certain things like we don't think the implication of them. But come to look at it, I observe elections. That's really my turf. We organize election observation missions around Africa, Nigeria. And one thing we don't get to see and we have frowned about is the fact that even the so-called big political parties end up not having party agents at all the polling units. How then do you come to challenge an election? So the political parties, even when it comes to conduct of election, they really are not helping the process. For instance, a lot of them do not even have what it takes to have party agents because they don't even have members. Party agents mustn't be paid, but to the extent that you have members who voluntarily go to the polling unit to be your eyes at the polling unit, these political parties don't have. And then the big ones who have the resources still do not make it a top priority. So it's hardly you see 100% deployment of party agents to polling units on election day. So it's, and then at the end of the day, they begin to criticize INEC for not conducting a credible election. So it's becoming a very heavy challenge. And then look at Anambra. Unprecedented 37 political parties were on the ballot paper. In Nigeria, I have never seen that length of a ballot paper. And I can tell you, and you can confirm it's in public space, more than 30 of these political parties put together did not attain 5% of the votes cast in that Anambra gubernatorial election. So why were they on the ballot? What gave them the motivation to be on that ballot, if it is not just to boost their CV, one-time gubernatorial aspirant? Oh. So it's really becoming a challenge, and it's increasing the cost of elections.
All right, Lazarus, thanks. Let's go back to Dr. Eunice Atanko before we return to Professor Samego, because Professor Samego put some issues on the table earlier, talking about the functions of political parties and what would need to do in terms of managing the number. Dr. Atanko, yes. Again, looking at the reality of what we face in the country, what is the rationale for the exploding number of political parties? I mean, as we said, it's now from 68 to X number of that we're going to have. Is there a sense in which it's now a Nigerian thing, look, I have my own political party, and yet the parties themselves do not appear to be up to scratch? Is it possible to conceptualize of a situation where there will be special interests, special locations where parties pursue those interests and then seek to capture power?
No, the truth about it is that people are not happy with the performance of those political parties who have been in power. And so they seek for another platform. And one of the advantages of the multi-party political system is that it encourages participation. We should be happy that Nigerians are even showing interest into politicking, as it were now. Recently, I saw a huge celebration. One of the political parties was registered for, they said now they don't have a young chairman of a political party. So you see, it means that the Nigerian youth have shown so much interest, which we want them to show more into the political space. So in as much as this particular situation has been established, I agree seriously that there's a way in which issues of political party performance and all should be regulated in certain area. But I do not agree to the fact that when you talk about issue of funding, probably is an inimical to the probably survival of democracy in a way. In other way, let's look at what Lazarus was saying about agents. Each agent must be paid. If you don't have money to pay agents, in fact, you are just wasting your time. No political party member will go in as much as he respects the political party, to go and say he is doing it for free, because the position in which they have already been posted is that we make so much money, and that is not true. We make so much money. When you say there's a huge contest in Anambra, I think it's a plus for our Nigerian political party rather than diminishing what their performance are. If they have not contested in that particular election, the same people will come up and say, those particular parties did not even field a particular candidate. So I think it's a plus for all the political parties that we did a very fantastic job by even contesting the positions in Anambra State. And this is what we expect to see in coming elections. You know, the idea of politics is not for you to sit back at home, not participating. It is good to participate. It gives opportunity for other persons to fend. If, for example, now, the new electoral act that is already being debated at the National Assembly is even considering the issue of having independent candidates. Independent candidates. How many independent candidates would you have? How would the ballot paper look like? Professor Amigu was talking about an anaconda snake. That is what the thing may look like. It may even be longer than that. So, but then the truth about it is that we need to open up this space and give opportunities to other political parties and encourage participation into the politics so that people can be able to ventilate their own position and possibly win positions. And if possible, there are going to be merger for some of the political parties.
Yeah, Dr. Tanko, just before we sign you off,
yes.
One point that has come up, and we keep hearing that and seeing it, we keep hearing about it and seeing it in elections, void ballots. And oftentimes this boils down to poor voter education.
Yes.
What is the challenge with political parties, as many as they are? We just take it on that singular responsibility of educating their voters to say, look, this is how to vote.
While majority of us have engaged in doing so, and collectively through the Interparty Advisory Council, we even go onto the street to kind of educate the voters and all how to go about certain ways in campaigning, and then making sure that they are well educated in the process of election. There are issues of funding. I keep on mentioning it. Like, for example, now, if you take a civil society organization, comparing it, because they have taken over almost the space of the political parties anyway. The thing is this: when the civil society group, they can source money locally and then ask a civil society group to tell you their members. They cannot. Are they spread all across the country? No. But they can source enormous sums of money. One person or two persons may sit in his own bedroom and belong to a civil society group and source dollars from another country, and then still use it, and then you go use it again at the same time. You now make accusation at the political parties who cannot even get money locally or internationally. And then you expect us to perform as we do. So it's not fair. If we are going to help the political party, let's do it now. There's no amount of money that is too much to spend for our political democracy system in this country. It will be, you'll be proud some of the achievement of the political parties and individuals in this country. At a particular time, you cannot do anything. But as a political party now, look at the monumental development that some political party leaders have achieved across the country. So I'll be proud to say, yes, adding to my CV, that I was a chairman of a political party which I have led credibly well.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Yunusa Tanko. Well, for the idea of a political party, if you need to articulate your position, I'm sure your market skills should be up doing it as well. At least people believe in that, and they'll get to buy into it.
Yes.
Well, we'd like to thank you very much for joining us on the program. We understand you'd like to see to some other appointments of yours this morning. Thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. After this break, we'll return to the conversation with the other guests still in the studio.
NTATV College Jos, an affiliate of the prestigious Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, is organizing a one-month short course on online news reporting. The course is scheduled for 5th February to 16th March 2018 at the NTATV College premises, Rayfield, Jos. The cost for workshop is 100,000 naira per participant, accommodation inclusive. This course will be targeting professional journalists and those wishing to pursue courses in this field. The course will be teaching participants the act of using mobile phone cameras and digital cameras to generate reports and how these news stories, photos and videos can be produced or even published straight from the field, making the news production process faster and more efficient. Take advantage of this opportunity. NTATV College, training you to be the best you want to be. For inquiries, contact the academic office on 0806 908 9807 0816 956 1843.
Oh boy, climb this thing now. Not be only to connect lights.
Come you and yourself now.
Now wow. Oh boy, calm down now. Oga Kasali electrician, who would they look for with this? Oh, Oga Kasali, come help us fix this wire now.
Sorry, I no longer carry out illegal connection. It puts the lives of people at risk and can cause fire outbreak and disrupt power supply. I will never be part of anything that has to do with this any longer because change begins with me.
Oh boy, letting him talk makes sense. Oh boy, we could carry this ladder from off.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're welcome back. But if you just joined us, it's Good Morning Nigeria, and we are live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We still have two of our guests here with us. That's Professor Samegu and Lazarus Appear. Let's return to, Professor Samegu. Professor Samegu, you were talking about what we had in the past and then the reason or the necessity for us to try to consider streamlining the number of political parties that we have today, special interests and so on and so forth. But how would you then respond to the concerns that came about when the Second Republic Constitution was being fashioned out to say, look, the kind of ethnic and parochial parties that we had in the First Republic, it was alleged, was one of the constitutive factors for the fall of that republic. And therefore, coming on now to the Second Republic in 1979, they said every party must be national in outlook. Okay.
Yeah, I think you have made half of the explanation. And I want to add, to make the first point that multi-party system is good for a diverse, multi-ethnic, multi-religious society like our own. So when we complain about the number of parties that we have, it is not because we don't like a multi-party arrangement. It is the best for us. But if you look at our history, while we are basically, we are inherently multi-party, you know, in the way we start, we often end up with two large parties. It happened in the First Republic. It happened in the Second Republic. The first elections were very competitive in the First Republic. 64, 65, massive realignment of parties, leading to two major confrontations.
That's right.
In the Second Republic, we had the same situation in which all other parties came together to challenge the NPN. And this is not an accident. It is because of the choice of electoral system that we have made. If you have the first past the post system in which people contest from large constituencies with a single member and it goes on without any interruption, you are like the system will move towards a two-party arrangement. In fact, in political science literature, that is what we call the Dovenger's law, you know, basically as the elections go on and on. But the real point that you are, the real question that you are posing, you know, about those republics is that having had a very bitter experience in the First Republic, in which you had 3 major regions. And each of the regions was dominated by one large party. So NPC, synonymous with the North. Awolo's party, AG, synonymous with the West. And then you have the NCNC, increasingly synonymous with the East. Party competition became inter-ethnic competition. And the North, of course, that had advantage, had the opportunity to form governments at least twice. What we try to do in the Second Republic is what is often described as political engineering. We try to engineer national parties, and that is part of the problem we have today. So in order to run away from parties that are clannish, that are ethnic, that are sectarian, you then define that every party must be national in outlook. And you begin by saying you need a presence in 2/3 of the states. Your national officers have to reflect federal character, which is fine. And because we moved in that direction of political engineering, we then didn't even consider the possibility that a party can be local in nature. And I really don't have even problem with a religious party. If you are an ustaz and you are allowed to form your party and you win in a local government, by the time you are found to have eaten their money, your legitimacy disappears. So my point really is that the phobia about sectarian and ethnic parties led us into this whole idea that parties must be big. So if we really have a feeling that some parties may want to capture power at local level, some may not even want to capture power, at national, they are focused on state level. These are the kind of structuring that we can bring into it. But it's a conversation for the Nigerian people. It's not a conversation for INEC to regulate and recommend the type of party system that we need in this country. And I think we need a national debate on this issue. And I think that we need a situation in which we can prescribe certain, criteria for forming parties. But must parties be national? And because you insist that parties are national, they can provide on paper, evidence of existence all over the country. But in reality, in terms of the size of their membership, there's nothing to show that they are really national parties. In fact, some of the things I read recently are referring to some parties as Toyota parties, where you can put all their members in one car and drive off. But on paper, they are national in nature. So the question is that, why do we insist on national parties when in reality it's a difficult enterprise?
Lazarus. So it's just a greater challenge for us when Lazarus should come in there.
Yes, I totally agree. And let me also correct the impression. I am not against multi-party system. It's very good. But I quite agree to the fact that because one is based in a certain locality and decides to start a political party, why not let him be a local party and build from there? First, they capture the local government, and then maybe they capture some seats in the state parliament, and then they can grow from there. The idea of insisting and stretching political parties to start national when they have not even won a councillor seat is really not healthy. The other thing is we need to look at the other side of the conversation. We have the multiple party system. We have 68 options, so to speak. What are the 180 million Nigerians doing? Why are they not enlisting in political parties? Who says being a member of a political party is bad? I don't see anything wrong with that. And often, like some of the tweets are saying, young people are saying the way partisan politics plays is not very good and attractive to them. It is because someone who opted to be a member is playing it the way they know how to. You can also enlist and be party members and play the party how you think is best played. And in that sense, you will provide a very good alternative to the other person. So staying out does not solve anything. So my thinking is to say Nigerians must understand that they have to also get involved. They have to join political parties. Okay, if you don't like the way the big political parties are playing, there are political parties that do not even have any ESCO in your state. enlist and become the chairman and be 20 years old and make history as the youngest chairman, state chairman of a political party. That's a start.
Now,
and
you
then
monitor
that brings you to the negotiation table.
Now, you monitor election from time to time because we've had you. What exactly do you see at the local government, at the ward level, at all those nooks and crannies of the country before election time? Because we've said once political parties are registered, it's not just because of election now. Beyond the election, what other things do you see from young persons, from women, from different interests, beyond the big names that we hear? How is voter education or even electoral education going on, really, to encourage people?
So it's very poor. Voter education at the grassroots in Nigeria is very poor. And why the dominant two political parties continue to dominate is because when they rolled out and they made resources, they keep coming back with handouts to the grassroots people, the women group, the retirees, the young folks at this level. And so their parties have come to be known. And in truth, Nigerians, there is a challenge of understanding the several political parties at the grassroots.
Why is it so?
Because there is very poor voter education. Like literally, in 2015 general election, the average of 22,000 ballots were cancelled per state. Either because people do not know how to cast their ballot very well. 22,000 is a lot of votes by every state on the average. And the reason is because someone comes and they see something that looks like the symbol they were briefed, because there is something we call community rigging that is ongoing in Nigeria. The community agrees to who they will vote, and then they enlighten the people about the party logo. Someone still comes there and sees a logo that looks like the one that was described to him. He thumb prints there and then realizes, oh no, that's not the one, and thumb prints another place, and that ballot is wasted. And then we are complaining about apathy because people are refusing to go to the polling units to vote. The few that come to vote are even not voting correctly. So we have a problem, and the problem for me is mass mobilization of Nigerians, especially young Nigerians, to join political parties, and then they will broaden the space and our democracy will naturally be deepened at that level. So we need massive enrollment of young people in political parties. That in itself will create massive education and awareness about politics and partisan politics at the grassroots level.
Professor Samego, to return to you, what do we see as the emerging trend in the Fourth Republic political arrangements, particularly this time looking at the platforms of the political parties? How are these parties being managed? Some of the pathologies that you already talked about, some of them we know, including, of course, one of a lack of internal democracy. But in terms of conceptualization, what do we know about how these parties run themselves and what their goals are? If one, from what we have seen and what we have heard, they cannot effectively mobilize their members or properly educate their voters, or expecting handouts from the government to function. It wasn't the case, say in the First Republic, that you were expecting handouts from the regional governments. You had subscriptions that your members had to pay. So when did this handout mentality set in, and how has it impeded the governance of the parties themselves that are seeking political power?
Yeah. Well, you know, in the course of my work as a teacher, as a civil society person, and the interface with different generations of politicians, there are clear lessons that have been drawn out. And one of the major lessons that have been learned over the years is that commitment to politics in the First Republic was much higher than what you find today. I have been told stories by NEPU activists, people committed to Aminu Kano, who would take their own personal money and travel to Kano to attend the party meeting. And they were doing it as a commitment. They connected with the ideals of the party. They saw the party as synonymous with their destiny. And even when they didn't have money, they contributed their fees. And that was how these parties were funded. What I hear from political parties today is completely different. If you organize a local meeting, you know, the members that come to that meeting expect the party to give them transportation money. And if you don't give them transportation money, they can hold the leaders to ransom and say, you can't bring us all the way here. You know, and what this really means is that they don't have that commitment. They don't have commitment as individuals to the ideals of the party. And therefore, it is a question of economic survival. So what is really important for me today is that the basis of party identification has completely changed. You know, so people, and because parties don't stand for something, you don't have the kind of ideas that can fire the imagination of members. So it therefore becomes the political economy of survival, you know, of individuals. And therefore, party identification is likely determined by which party has the biggest prospect of winning, so that at the end of the day, we can enjoy patronage. And that is why I think we need to go back to make politics in this country really a contest of ideas. You know, and once you deny politics the opportunity of being a contest of ideas, and it simply becomes about who can win in terms of the level of organizing violence, in terms of getting money to bribe voters, then we are going to lose the real essence of this democracy. And I think we need to go back to the party system. We need to reinvigorate the party system. Parties have to stand for something. They have to mobilize on the basis of those identities. And party identification has to be on the basis of those bigger ideals that people are striving for. But if it is simply about which party will win so that we can get patronage, then politics will be completely, our democracy will be emptied of its content.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Samegu. Well, Mr. Lazarus Appeal, we have reactions already. Yes, you've seen some of them already have been scrolled on the screen, but we have more. We'll run through them quickly. Now, this is from Pastor Adenyoju. Says, I support Dr. UNICEF for political parties to be funded with a fixed annual amount because the two major parties are funded A to Z with state funds, and this is the reason why the smaller parties are not heard.
This tweet is from Obinna Chukwezie. It says, how do you deal with a situation where a person holds a membership card of one party but has sympathy for another?
Muda too says, multiple parties are the yardstick to measure lack of unity and quality in Nigeria.
And Jacob Noria tweets, kudos to Lazarus Appeal. Young people are usually sidelined in Nigerian politics. The Nigerian youth ought to be encouraged and mentored by political parties to sustain the political system.
John Ifejika says, what is the rationale behind a political party candidate scoring 145 votes and 35 votes respectively?
Adisa Abiose tweets, the present system is cumbersome and expensive. If there's room for independent candidacy, good people will find it easy to clinch power.
Kaju Clyde has this tweet. Political parties in Nigeria are just platforms to compete for elective positions. They are also avenues for making money while creating logistics problem for INEC.
Akinola Hassan, yes, the Nigerian constitution opened the floodgates for the registration of numberless political parties. Can't we get some succor in the bylaws and regulations of INEC?
Awunoji Joshua says, when a candidate wins under a certain political party and fails to carry along the party ideology, a serious party should call him to order if he refuses. He should be expelled from the party immediately.
All right, those are the tweets that we have in addition to the ones that have been scrolling on the screen, as you can see them there. Lazarus, one of the tweets there was talking about independent candidacy. And I recall that at some point when, of course, the issue of carpet crossing, defection was pretty rife in the politics, some person said, look, if you are dissatisfied with the management of a political party, rather than shopping for another political party, and you feel that you are sufficiently credible and strong enough to contest an election, why don't you stand on your own? And this is brought about now the advent of independent candidacy, as we have seen in the process of amending the 1999 Constitution. Is that likely to provide some succor or likely to aggravate the challenges that managing 68 political parties in an election, in a particular election, might present?
I wish I can say with certainty that it will solve the problem of these defections and good people staying away from politics. Independent candidacy will no doubt encourage a lot of Nigerians that I know to come into elections and also strive to be an alternative for the voters. But when we talk about these things, we can't talk about them independent of the fact that it's going to definitely increase and overwhelm INEC. Because if everyone is feeling too safe and wanting safety to be independent candidate as against joining a political party because it's too muddy there, then it means 100 people may end up being on the ballot as presidential aspirants. Now, let's think about it. Is it their pictures that will be on the ballot, or is it that they will be asked to create a logo for their candidacy so that it can be captured on the ballot? Also know that the same ballot is going to have those running on the platform of political parties. Already with just political parties, look at how poorly the voters are faring at the polls. 22,000 votes in a state on the average, not counting because a voter does not know how to vote. Now you further complicate the ballot with all of this. I am saying this in light of not supporting independent candidacy. I'm saying it in light of, as we push for these things, let us also know the accompanying challenges. And perhaps let's be sincere to ourselves. Not everybody will be a candidate. You must be able to see someone that your ideals resonate with and then be able to support the person instead of opting to run for election. The other thing is, I do not think people who want to run as independent candidacy have a valid point in saying political parties are too dirty for them to join. Governance is tough. To fix the problems of government, you have to have a solution mind. Just the same way, if you bring your solution-mindedness into political parties, you will be able to rub off positively on the political parties and make them better institutions that will run for election. Personally, if I take on a party that has never won elections in my state to run for governor, first, that gives me a clean slate to parade myself as saying, you know what, this party is without blemish, it's clean. So this state needs newness. Let's start from here. It's a good narrative to kickstart with. It mustn't be independent candidacy. So let us see the accompanying challenge we are bringing to the polity and to the conduct of elections.
Looking at other areas raised from the tweet, Professor Samego said the Constitution, of course, has allowed this registration to go on from time to time, multiplicity of political parties or the numberless situation. Now, the tweet was asking a question, can't we get some circle in the bylaws and some other regulation from INEC?
Yeah, I think if you read the Constitution very well, INEC has responsibility not only to register parties, not only to monitor them, but also to regulate the activities of political parties. The question is, where do you draw the line between regulations that will be perceived, you know, as advancing the cause of a more sane electoral process, and those that are seen to be breaches of the constitutional provisions? I think this is where to draw the line. That is a dilemma that you need to face. You know, I'm sure that INEC, from what I do know, they have a deluge of regulations, and from every election to another, they come out clearly with regulation for political parties in terms of how they conduct their primaries, in terms of, but of course, regulations when they are not obeyed, you know, it's not the same force of constitutional breach that you can go to court to enforce, you know. And then you need to also think of the range of sanctions that are also effective in calling parties to order. You know, sometimes regulations are very beautiful. You ask a politician that has engaged in infraction to pay 1 million. This is something they can easily pay and move on with their life. So the question is, to what extent does that help? But I think there are rooms for regulation, and there are many areas in which INEC regulates the conduct of parties. And I think one possible area, and this is something for Nigerians to decide, is probably to have the power to determine access to the ballots. And I think if INEC has that power, and it is not seen as crossing the line in terms of breaching or abridging the rights of the Nigerians, of the Nigerian people, probably that would be one way of sanitizing and managing the process.
Right. Gentlemen, still to push in the direction of the different things that we've seen as implication on the polity. The spirit of sportsmanship, when will fail to actually capture a particular political party's idea or stand in one way or the other. Where does this leave us in all this practice for democratic process to actually be in place?
Two fundamental points. One is this, that you cannot grow democracy without Democrats. That's number one. So even people don't believe. Yeah, in fact, there's a late Professor Claude Ake who used to say that politicians in this country cannot afford the notorious inconvenience of obeying democratic game. You know, so they rather want to go through the shortcuts. That is number one. The second point about that is that politics is a very desperate game in this country. You know, because we have weak institutions, even to punish those who steal public money. The fact that you can easily access public office and become rich overnight, and you are seen living better than your neighbor, you know, will not also help us. You know, and I think we need to really be very careful in terms of how to deal with this issue.
All right, thank you very much. More tweets. Let's take a look at them. Hussein Ilawal says, morning. What we need as regards political parties is a level playing ground for all parties to educate the masses on the political parties' ideology, because it's only through these ideologies that people can really relate with any party. So yes, we do need more than one party.
And this, we have this from Titus Monday Knock. Titus Monday Knock tweets, it's unfortunate having so many political parties without them having clear-cut political agenda. All their agenda and policies are similar to already existing ones. What a waste of resources and time, and also a proliferation of political hatred amongst themselves.
Ikechukwu Wisdom says political parties are not formed based on multiplicity of a state, rather a group of people of same interest driven with same ideology.
Nelson Abodunde tweets, electoral education will not be encouraged because it will expose the people to the truth, and power may not go to where they want.
Akinola Hassan says, Professor Egu, thank you for your brilliant thought about the national outlook of political parties. Ordinarily, I feel there is nothing wrong with that. Parties should be encouraged to think nationally but act locally.
All right, those are the tweets that we have. Would like to thank our two guests for being with us. Professor Sam Egu, always a delight having you on Good Morning Nigeria. Resident Electoral Commissioner for Niger State and a Professor of Political Science.
Thank you.
Also, Electoral Matters expert who is always here with us, election monitor at various locations, Lazarus Happy. Thanks a lot for your contribution to our discussion.
My pleasure to be here.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so let's take over. Let's go to our complementary segments, and that's first. It will be the world of sports.